This year we lost a spiritual giant, Pastor Tony Campola. Tony was an evangelical Christian pastor whose love for Jesus and passion for the gospel was infectious. He was able to hold creatively the tensions between the head and the heart, between contemplation and action, between spirituality and justice. We need more people like him in our world. One of his favorite stories was when a skeptic challenged him about his faith, asking him, "What if you are wrong about all of this?" Tony responded, "What if I'm wrong? Well then, I've spent my whole life loving people, doing justice, and walking in hope. What if you're wrong? What if there is a God who loves us this deeply and has gone to unimaginable lengths to be with us? What if?" This Advent, in preparation for tonight, we have been exploring the four Gospels and each of their depiction of Jesus, because we understand that this is a mystery that we must prepare for, because we circle around it all the time, and hopefully each year it enters in a little more deeply. We looked at Matthew and how Matthew shows Jesus to be this authoritative teacher of wisdom, offering us the kingdom values and inviting us to follow those. We looked at Jesus through the eyes of Marc, who sees Jesus as a servant, a humble servant, serving the least and the last and the lost and the lonely. We looked at Jesus through the Gospel of Luke, the wounded healer who restores the whole person to the whole community. And we looked at Jesus through the Gospel of John, seeing Jesus as the loving Redeemer who reconciles us all with God. And tonight, all of these faces, teacher, servant, healer, Redeemer, converge, wrapped in the vulnerability of a newborn child. Tonight, we celebrate the greatest story ever told. And we are told today in John, in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was Christ. And then the Word, then Christ became flesh in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. It is true that God came into the world in Jesus, but it is also true that Christ was present in the beginning, long before Jesus showed up. Franciscan priest Father Richard Rohr writes that instead of thinking of Jesus bringing God into the world, perhaps it's better to say that Jesus came out of an already Christ-soaked world. Since the beginning of time, God's Spirit has been revealing its glory and goodness through creation. And in the birth of Jesus, this Christ becomes uniquely embodied in human form, fully human and fully divine. Tonight we celebrate the incarnation of Christ in Jesus, the moment when divine love stepped into human history, not with the shout of a king, but with the cry of an infant child. We celebrate the mystery of a God who doesn't stay at a distance, but comes close into the holy mess of your life and my life and our collective lives. To do that, to live and to love us as one of us, and to invite us to be followers of His way and little Christs. And as we remembered again tonight, as Yami said, the prophets long before Jesus had inklings of all of this. Isaiah writes, the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. And John picks up on this imagery and says, in Him, in Jesus, is life. And that life is the light of all people, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. Who among us does not know darkness? Who among us does not know the darkness of personal struggles, of anxiety or depression that keep us awake at night? Who among us does not know the darkness of mistakes that we've made that we wish we could undo? Or the quiet ache of loneliness even when we are surrounded by all kinds of people? Who among us does not know the darkness of fractured relationships, the silence of a loved one who has grown distant from us, the pain of words spoken in anger that we wish we could take back, but we can't? Who among us doesn't see the darkness of injustice in our world, the reckless exploitation of God's creation that scars the earth and threatens our future? The widening gap between the powerful and the powerless, where the cries of the poor and marginalized too often go unheard. And yet, the promise of Christmas is this: the light of Christ shines in and through all of it for those with eyes to see. And maybe that should be our Christmas prayer. Lord, give me eyes so that I can see. A number of you have shared a recent article by New York Times columnist David Brooks. In it, Brooks reflects on how his understanding of faith has evolved over time. As an agnostic, he once thought faith was primarily about belief, settling the question of whether God exists. And so he sought books and arguments, thinking that faith was something to be proven or disproven. But what he discovered was that faith didn't come through persuasion or information, but through moments of awe and wonder. These moments awaken us to the mystery beyond our understanding. You've all had moments like this. Standing at the foot of a mountain at dawn, standing on the beach looking out at the ocean at dusk, gazing at the stars at the Milky Way, or looking at a child growing in her mother's womb. These moments don't settle questions as much as they deepen them and expand them. The poet Christian Wyman writes, "Religion is not made of these moments. Religion is the means of making these moments a part of your life." That's what you're doing tonight. You are making these moments a part of your life. Brooks shares one of those moments. It happened in a crowded subway in New York City under 33rd Street and 8th Avenue. Some of you have been there. He describes it as the truly ugliest spot in God's green earth. Well, that day, in that ugly spot, he had a shimmering awareness that every person around him had a soul. He saw the divine spark in them. He saw their infinite value. He saw their yearning and their suffering and their dignity all at once. It didn't prove God's existence, but it led him to wonder if there are all these souls, maybe there's a soul giver. This experience transformed the way that he saw his fellow brothers and sisters. It helped him hold both their brokenness and their beauty, their depravity and their majesty with tenderness and depth. This is the awe and wonder that we're invited to experience tonight on Christmas Eve. The awe and wonder of a light that shines in the darkness, as Isaiah and John proclaimed, a light that many have spoken, including the late Jerry Garcia, who said, once in a while you get shown the light in the strangest places if you look at it right. The story goes that night after night, a lighthouse keeper climbed the spiral staircase, carrying his lantern to the top of the lighthouse. But one stormy night, the power failed. So the lighthouse keeper grasped a small candle and climbed step by step into the wind and the darkness. At the top, he placed a tiny flame behind the glass. The whole thing seemed so absurd, like whispering into a hurricane. But far out at sea that night, a ship saw it. The captain would later say, "It was the faintest light I've ever seen, but it was the only one I could follow." Christmas is that light. A child born in a forgotten corner of the world, carrying all the hope of humanity. The light of Christ, even in the faintest flicker, in a subway car, on a stormy night, in the strangest places, has the power to guide us home. So what if the Word truly became flesh? What if God is here right now with us? What if the light of Christ can pierce even the deepest darkness? I wrote this poem without Christmas in mind, but I share it tonight as my Christmas invitation to you. It's called "The World Awaits." The world awaits you. The world awaits you. Greet it with your eyes. Embrace it with presence. Love it wholeheartedly. Every encounter is sacred. The bird flitting on the branch, the spider weaving her web, the child running along the footpath, all of it exists without you. Yet when your eyes are open, the world finds a deeper reflection and belonging in your gaze. Your look ripens things. Your presence kindles possibilities. Your love breathes life, breaking forth like the dawn. In your stillness, find the quiet truth. In your movement, the eternal flow. For you are part of this tapestry, a thread weaving light into the world. This is the call of Christmas. To see the sacred in the ordinary and to carry the light of Christ into the world. And it always begins with seeing. Seeing the divine spark within each person and even in the most unremarkable places. Seeing that every act of love, no matter how small, is part of the tapestry that God is weaving. It begins with seeing, and it continues with living. Living as bearers of the light in our words, in our actions, in our stillness, and our movement. Living with the courage to whisper into hurricanes, trusting that even the faintest flame can guide somebody home. Tonight, we will light our candles and we will sing Silent Night. Let this light remind you that God's love is born in the humblest of places, that even the smallest flicker of hope can become a beacon, that the darkness, no matter how deep, will never overcome the light of Christ. And let it remind you of who you are called to be. A thread weaving light into the world, a bearer of peace, hope, joy, and love. So what if? What if you allowed the light to break through to you? And what if you allowed the light to move out into the world through you? Merry Christmas. Amen.